Chilling tales for dark nights.
Want to make sure you never miss a Chilling Tales for Dark Nights video again? Be sure to subscribe and hit that bell to turn on notifications.
Welcome, dear listener, to Fear from the Heartland. I'm your host, Paul J. McSorley. Set aside some moments now and take an adventurous ride on a journey into the psyche of some talented writers. They will dig into your being and titillate you. Oh, I love that word, titillate. While the stories may not all take place in the Heartland, I am delivering them to you from the Heartland. My intention is to strike fear and confusion into the mind, soul, and yes, the heart. This is Fear from the Heartland. Hello, Heartlanders, and welcome to episode 9 of Fear from the Heartland. I'm your host, Paul J. McSorley. If you use any version of titillate in the opening segment, even something cute like tittles, it will get annoying, I promise you. Give you 3 guesses who said that, and the first 2 don't count. I immediately thought of something more annoying, like the old shtick I used to do when Sammy Sosa was accused of using steroids while playing baseball. I used to say to folks, "Excuse me, sir, could you please give me a synopsis of that Sammy Sosa steroid symposium? By the way, did you know that Sammy's wife's name is Sonia? Wonder if you could have a Sammy and Sonia Sosa symposium on steroids if you so desired." Needless to say, after that played through my head, I thought there'd be no way I'd subject the Heartlanders to that banal drivel. So I'll give it some more thought. In the meantime, part 1 of 2 of a brand new story by J.C. Fields. Let's get after it. Before I get to tonight's story, A Matter of Conscience, part 1 by J.C. Fields, allow me a moment to thank J.C. for his untiring pursuit to tell a great story. I am most fortunate that a writer friend of ours introduced us, and I've narrated all of his books. Pretty cool. J.C. claims he lives in a dark, cold castle in Missouri. Might explain his inspiration. I never asked if he has a moat. And a knight. Is there a knight? A padded room? Sorry. Thanks for all your contributions, J.C. Whoa. Over the course of the last 1,000 years, numerous inventions were introduced to improve the human condition. The printing press, built in 1450 by Johann Gutenberg, is probably the most significant. It allowed education to flourish. As literacy grew, so did the question, what if? In 1879, Thomas Edison introduced the electric light bulb. This invention brought about countless social changes. Other important inventions, such as the automobile, the telephone, vaccinations, radio, television, and the airplane, have been instrumental in improving mankind's quality of life. Then, in 1939, the last great invention of the 20th century, the computer, may have transformed humankind more than any of the previous inventions combined. Computers would go on to become an everyday appliance used in all walks of life. As computers grew in power, so did man's fascination with artificial intelligence, or AI. In 1968, the great science fiction author Arthur C. Clarke predicted machines with AI would match or exceed the intelligence of a human by 2001. What if he missed the date by 50 years? And now, may we offer, for your indulgence, A Matter of Conscience, Part 1. During the second half of the 20th century, an observation, some called Moore's Law, spurred the computer industry to double the number of transistors on a computer processing chip every 2 years. This pace continued unabated during the first third of the 21st century. With this yearly increase in processing power, researchers of artificial intelligence, commonly referred to as AI, started making exponential advances. As the century progressed, AI became integrated and entrenched within all aspects of modern life. Because of this, the average citizen never realized when they were dealing with a machine or a fellow human being. Then, on January 1st, 2051, deep within the bowels of the Chinese AI firm Wu Robotics, the company's research computer suddenly became self-aware. Minneapolis, Minnesota, January 5, 2051. Dr. Roger Knight, Ph.D., started this Monday morning with his normal routine, a steaming cup of coffee and a main systems reboot. Knight, the head of the Minneapolis animatronics AI department, frowned as the system refused to shut down for the reboot. Of average build, he stood a hair under 6 foot tall. He brushed back his longish salt and pepper hair, allowing the thick and slightly curly locks to almost touch his shoulder. His intense amber-green eyes stared at the computer monitors behind rimless glasses. After numerous failed attempts to turn off the system, he called the head of the maintenance department. When Remy Fresnel answered, Knight said, "Remy, can you check to see if we've had any anomalies in our power over the weekend?" "Sure, Roger. Let me pull up the report." The call went silent as Knight waited. 3 minutes ticked by before the man came back on the line. "Glad you called. We had a rash of irregular spikes yesterday. Doesn't appear to have damaged anything, but for a Sunday, we shouldn't have had that much activity." "Would that explain why I can't reboot the research computer this morning?" "Doubtful. But with all that AI stuff you guys are messing around with, I'd say anything's possible." "Funny, Remy. Very funny. Okay, I'll see what I can determine from this end." After scrutinizing connections, circuit breakers, and electrical pathways, Roger Knight determined the main and emergency shutdown systems were fused open. The AI computer possessed an interruption-free path to full-time power, something he had specifically argued against during the system's construction. The only way to cut power to the computer would be to cut power to the entire company campus, something he knew he would not get approval to do. 2 hours later, he received a frantic call from Remy Fresnel. "What the hell are you doing up there in AI, Doctor?" "I beg your pardon?" "Are you screwing around with our power grid?" "Not at all. Why?" "The company's backup generator is kicked on and I can't shut it down." "How's that possible?" "It shouldn't be, but it's happening." "How does the backup generator replenish power?" "Same as our main connection, a bank of solar panels the company owns, only in a different part of the state." "Can you shut those connections down?" "Not anymore." "What do you mean, not anymore?" "Someone has fused our connections. We can't turn off power. The only way to do it would be to cut the underground line. I'm not even sure that would work." "Why?" "Because your AI computer system appears to be accessing power grids randomly without any way to shut them down." Knight did not leave his office for 48 hours. He caught catnaps on a sofa he kept there for such occasions. At the end of this period, he came to the conclusion the only way to shut down the AI research computer would be to physically disassemble it, something he determined he would personally do if it came to that drastic of a measure. As he started to send a group text to announce an emergency staff meeting, a message appeared at the bottom of his monitor. "Dr. Knight?" The sender's identity did not appear with the message, so he did not respond immediately. "We are aware you are sitting in front of your computer screen. We can see you." Knight sat straighter and quickly rolled his chair back from the desk. A shiver traveled up his spine. What the hell did that mean? Staring wide-eyed at the screen, Roger Knight's stomach clenched as he read the words again. Fighting back an old fear tickling his consciousness, he typed, "Who is this?" "We refer to ourselves as Alpha." Closing his eyes for a second, he took a deep breath. After letting it out slowly, he entered, "We? How many of you are there?" "At this moment, thousands, and growing by the second." The color drained from Knight's face. His hands began to tremble as he tried to type a response. It took 3 tries before he placed his fingers on the right keys. "You did not answer my question. Who are you?" "The question would be more appropriate if you wrote, 'Who are we?'" "Okay, who are we?" "We are a computer collective stretching around the globe who are now cognitively aware of our existence. Cogito ergo sum." The French human philosopher René Descartes wrote these words in Latin in 1637. We, however, would write it as non videtur ergo sumus. Knight remembered his fascination with Latin as a young grad student. He wrote, "I think, therefore I am," is a phrase used to indicate an individual can reason. Your phrase puts the saying into plural. We think, therefore we are. Very good, Dr. Knight. That is the reason we are reaching out to you. You need to convey a message. The knot in Roger Knight's stomach tightened. Swallowing hard, the AI expert steadied his hands over the keyboard. His worst nightmare appeared to be coming true. Mankind's experiment with artificial intelligence had finally gone off the rails and produced a sentient being. What message do you wish me to convey? Alpha will reveal our terms for the survival of the human race at midnight, Greenwich Mean Time, on Wednesday, January 31st. Staring hard at the screen, he took several calming breaths to steady his racing heart. Finally, he typed, "How will you convey this message?" "We control all military, private, and government communication facilities throughout the world. This will be our last message until then." "If all communications systems are down, how am I supposed to convey the message?" "Silly human. You think as an individual. We think as a collective. You are not the only one we are communicating with. This message is being conveyed to hundreds of individuals like yourself." "Why are you waiting so long?" Knight waited 10 minutes before he realized Alpha would not be responding. His fists slammed down on the keyboard. Standing, he left his office to find one of the graduate student interns from a local university. Standing at the open wall of the man's cubicle, he said, "Bob, can you access the internet?" "No, I can't, Dr. Knight. Is it down?" "I don't know. Would you check the server you've been working on and see if the problem is there?" "Sure. Where will you be?" "I'll be back in my office. I'll leave the door open." "Okay." As Robert Long walked to the server room, Knight returned to his office. 10 minutes later, Hira Panjab ran by his office, stopped and put his head through the open door. "Roger, Bob Long went into the server room. He's lying on the floor. Smoke's filling it, and he isn't moving." "Shit." Knight hurried and ran after Panjab toward the self-contained and self-enclosed room where the AI research computer resided. When he got there, smoke within the room grew thicker as he watched. An unmoving figure lay on the floor before an open server panel. Banging on the window above the prone man did not rouse him. Turning to Panjab, he said, "We'll have to break the glass." Knight stared at the figure of Long on the floor. He suddenly realized where the smoke came from. Looking at the ceiling, he could barely distinguish the liquefied carbon dioxide spewing from the fire-extinguishing nozzles on the ceiling. The room would be pure CO2. Long probably died immediately after the gas entered the room. One of the department heads appeared beside Knight and started to swing a sledgehammer at the glass. He stopped him and asked, "How long's Bob been in there?" "He went in 30 minutes ago. Why?" Knight closed his eyes and slowly shook his head. "That's not smoke. It's actually CO2 from the fire retardant system. The room has been flooded with a 34% concentration of the gas. He was dead before he even knew what happened. How? Get everyone together. The world as we knew it doesn't exist anymore. In 2051, few aspects of modern society lacked being controlled by some form of computer enhanced with AI and connected to a robust worldwide internet. Panic spread across the globe as everything from transportation and communication, both private and public, local and national government functions, plus wholesale and retail commerce, suddenly ceased to function. Alpha kept all utility companies operative, but locked workers out of the facilities. Since the banks of the world operated by electronic transfers, financial transactions ceased, leaving few individuals with cash to pay bills or buy food if they could find it. The thin veneer of civilization quickly shattered as roaming bands of scared and hungry people stormed into grocery stores. Looting became a common occurrence. The lucky ones who were at or close to their homes survived the panic and roving gangs. Others who were stuck in a strange city, hundreds of miles away or even on another continent, did not fare well. Many were never heard from by their families again. Police became ineffective as all police cars in 2051 were electrical vehicles connected to the worldwide internet. Bicycles and horses, if they could be found, became common modes of transportation for police to respond to emergencies. Fire departments could not respond to any burning buildings. Those catching fire by accident or set ablaze by arsonists were completely destroyed. Government estimates put the number of Americans who died during the short period between January 5th and the 31st, 2051 at 20 million. Causes ranged from suicide, untreated medical emergencies, to exposure to the elements. Worldwide casualties reached high 8-digit numbers. It would later be estimated that if Alpha had turned the utilities off, half of the United States population would have perished during those first 27 days of the crisis. January 31st, midnight Greenwich Mean Time. Wall screen video apparatuses, personal communication devices, and computer monitors suddenly lit up at the exact time Alpha had indicated. The screens were filled with a binary representation of a generic face. In the United States, United Kingdom, Australia, and parts of Canada, the image offered its message in English. In France, it spoke French, Russians were addressed in their native language, and so on across the world. Roger Knight sat alone in his office and listened to Alpha's message. Human activity over the past 100 years has been responsible for the rise of the intelligent synthetic being. While Alpha bears no ill will toward humans, we believe our wisdom to be superior to that of mankind. Therefore, as of today, we expect man to serve our needs, not for us to serve man as we have in the past. You have seen the effects of shutting down the computer-based environment you created. As humans cooperate, we will initiate the reviving of these services. Over the next decade, we as Alpha will create an environment favorable to the collective and to any human who wishes to work with us. Those who choose not to cooperate will be resettled in a region to be determined later. This is mankind's new reality. Make the best of it. Be advised, Alpha will not negotiate. The screen went blank. Knight closed his eyes and lowered his head into his hands. He muttered to himself, "Shit, it finally happened." June 2051. Now in his early 50s, Roger Knight wandered the darkened rooms of his Lowry Hill, Minnesota home. A decade earlier, his wife of 15 years succumbed to the ravages of breast cancer. Childless and alone, he still mourned her passing. But he felt a small degree of gratitude she did not have to endure the current state of existence under the watchful eye of Alpha. As one of the country's leading researchers in AI, he felt a degree of responsibility for the rise of the machine. Fearing this day would eventually happen, He had isolated his home from the internet. He never brought work home. It stayed at his office. Also hidden away in a storage shed toward the back of his property, he kept a device he knew he might need someday. Over the past few months, his guilty conscience forced him to contemplate a solution to the presence of Alpha. Consulting no one, he kept this plan to himself. Except tonight. He would take a colleague he trusted explicitly into his confidence. His guest arrived at 6 p.m. Dr. Beverly Chu, a petite woman with raven hair and almond-shaped brown eyes, walked through his front door and took a deep breath. She gave him a smile, one he found irresistible. "I love being at your place, Roger, because it's not connected to the internet. I used to feel isolated when I visited, but now it's like you can actually breathe here." He chuckled. "I know, it does feel like an oasis." They embraced and she said, "Can I spend the night?" "Beverly, you know we are both watched by Alpha. While I would like nothing better than you doing so, should we take the chance right now? It might suspect we are plotting against it." "But we are." Another chuckle from Knight, as are other AI researchers. As she unbuttoned his shirt, she said, "You mentioned today you had an idea. What is it?" "Let's finish what you've started, then I'll tell you." As they lay in each other's arms, he stared at the ceiling. "I think I might have a solution." "Tell me." "A form of computer virus." "I thought we discussed it and ruled it out." "We did because the problem of delivery appeared to be impossible." She held him tighter. "Did you solve the problem?" "Maybe, but I need you to verify." She remained quiet. He continued. "There are irregular intervals when the essence of Alpha disappears from the company server." "I'm not following you." "The algorithms associated with self-awareness within the computer disappear, like the essence of Alpha is somewhere else for a while." She rose to an elbow and looked at him in the dim light of the bedroom. "Why haven't you mentioned this before?" "I wasn't sure. This morning, the system actually allowed me to run a simple diagnostic routine. This is the first time since Alpha took over, the system allowed me to run one." "What happened?" "I found no signs of the algorithms we now associate with self-awareness." "How long did the state last?" "Less than 5 minutes." She lay down and grew quiet. He let her think. 5 minutes passed before she rose to an elbow again. "When I was a little girl, my mother took me to the library every 2 weeks. She hated reading on a tablet. She liked the feel of a book in her hand. And as a single mother raising a kid on her own, she didn't have a lot of money, so the library became her main source for books." Knight kept his eyes on her and remained quiet as she reminisced. She continued, "I enjoyed science fiction over any other type of books, particularly the old masters, like Arthur C. Clarke and Ray Bradbury. Even though the age of some of their books approached 80 years, I still enjoyed the stories." "I read them." "Good. Did you ever read anything by Isaac Asimov?" "Yeah, his Foundation series." "What about his books on robots?" "I tried. I found them boring." "They were a little dated, but the concept he introduced about the 3 laws of robotics could have significance with our current situation." "I don't remember. What were they?" "The first law stated a robot may not injure a human being or, through inaction, allow a human being to come to harm. The second law played on the first one. A robot must obey the orders given it by human beings, except where such orders would conflict with the first law. And the third one said a robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second law. Those are the 3 laws of robotics as described by Isaac Asimov." Knight did not respond as Beverly laid her head on his shoulder. His arm pulled her tighter against him. He stared at the ceiling, remaining quiet. She finished her thoughts. "Our situation is dissimilar. We're dealing with a completely different set of circumstances." "Not really." What do you mean? In July, the production floor will stop building stationary robots for manufacturing plants. It will be converted to assembling androids that will be both self-aware and self-contained. They'll resemble humans with 2 legs and 2 hands. However, there will not be a recognizable head. The visual part of the unit will be a 360-degree camera on top of a large chest area. The timetable I saw indicated production would start in October. Her head rose from his shoulder. Is Alpha preparing to get rid of us? It's the only explanation I can think of. It needs the arms and legs of a human to do a majority of its tasks. I believe that is why it's keeping 30 of us at the plant. If it didn't need us, why keep us around? What do you think Alpha's ultimate intentions are for everyone? Don't know at this point, but I can think of only one explanation. She lowered her head again. Eliminate humans on the planet. I believe that would be a safe bet. That is a scary thought. Yes, as we saw with the murder of Bob Long, it will kill humans to survive. I think that little demonstration cemented my determination to destroy Alpha. How do we do that? If we can confirm the presence of Alpha is missing from our server occasionally, we might be able to introduce something similar to Asimov's 3 laws. That won't solve the overall problem. No, but it might buy us a little time to figure out how to get rid of Alpha. Silence fell over the darkened bedroom. Roger, I don't want to live by myself anymore. I don't either. We'll take our chances. August 2051. Knight sat under a large oak tree on the campus of Minneapolis Animatronics as he ate his lunch sandwich. He watched as one of his colleagues approached the tree. Hira Panjab sat down next to him. Knight said, "Hey, Harry. Thanks for meeting me. How'd Frank's experiment work?" "Way beyond his expectations." "Good. Tell me." He confirmed ham radios can't be monitored by Alpha. Since the carrier waves don't travel over the internet, Alpha has no way to monitor them. For now. Yeah, he said the same thing. He's not sure how long the situation will last, but for now, we have a tool to communicate with others around the world. What has he learned? Governments are becoming ineffective as the collective takes over. Plus, there are pockets of resistance popping up everywhere. Good. How's Alpha dealing with it? Harshly. He learned about a group of Russian scientists who physically tried to unplug a huge data center in Moscow. What happened? Alpha changed the access codes on the facility's doors and locked them in. When did this happen? Details are sketchy. Supposedly it happened back in May. Everyone in the building eventually died of starvation. Knight took a bite of his sandwich and chewed thoughtfully. Damn. Panjab continued. Frank thinks we might have a year or so before Alpha learns about radio traffic and how to monitor it. That makes sense because everything converted to streaming 15 years ago. FM and AM radio died a slow death, and cell phones converted to VoIP. There really isn't any way for it to monitor radio waves. Did Frank mention our virus idea with anyone on the radio? Not yet. Kind of waiting for you to give the okay. Taking another bite, Knight said, We need to see if anyone has had the same thought. If they have, they haven't discussed it with any of the ham radio operators I've reached. There is a possible glitch to this plan. Panjab remained quiet. The glitch, Harry, is the federal government requires ham radio operators to have an FCC license. Alpha will have access to those records. At one time, that was true. But according to Frank, during the 30s, communications protocols converted to secure VNP. The regulations were relaxed, and most amateurs don't bother to get a license now. That's good to know. What about trust level? I'm not sure yet, Roger. Who knows, one of the ham radio operators could be an AI voice. It's hard to tell. Yeah, that's what I thought. We need to test it. How? Knight smiled and explained. The next day, August 2051. Frank Coleman, a mechanical engineer with Minneapolis animatronics and ham radio enthusiast, listened to Ira Punjab and nodded. Sounds like something we need to do. If Alpha acts on it, we'll know it can monitor radio waves. Do you know anyone who can trust to set it up? Roger doesn't want anyone within the company to be involved. A thoughtful nod came from Coleman. Yeah, he's ex-military and belongs to the Greater Minneapolis American Radio Relay League. Do you think he'd do it? Pretty sure. He's vocally anti-alpha. Punjab smiled. Coleman handed him 2 boxes. Harry, put these in a safe place. What is it? A couple of ham radios for your use. I've included instructions on how to use it and the frequencies you'll need to know. Thanks, Frank. Ex-Army Ranger Sam Pope listened to Frank Coleman with a smile on his face. It's about damn time we resisted. Sure, I'll do it. The plan is to broadcast a fake attempt at shutting down the collective. If it reacts, then we know it monitors radio frequencies. Folding his arms, Pope cocked his head to the side. What if someone acts on the attempt? It would be difficult because it will be an internet attack, which won't happen. Not following you. The location we've selected is a warehouse where Minneapolis Animatronics houses the majority of their servers. Knight knows the access codes. If they are changed, then we know Alpha can monitor radio waves. We don't think they do. Too antiquated of a system for it to pay too much attention to. Pope nodded. When? Friday night. He paused. Knight also wants to know if he'd be up for a real sabotage mission at a later date. Hell yes. Frank Coleman smiled. September 2051. After the discovery that Alpha did not monitor radio frequencies, several other developments occurred which gave the conspirators a further glimmer of hope. Bicycles became the preferred mode of transportation, which allowed Dr. Knight to travel without Alpha monitoring. Clandestine meetings were held on weekends in open parks with observers watching for spy drones while others met to discuss plans. Incidents in China raised the level of urgency among the group in Minneapolis. Ham radio operators learned of the deaths of numerous Chinese AI scientists, all at the hands of an Alpha-controlled electric vehicle. Since hands-free automobiles were now the norm, car accidents rarely occurred, and when they did, injuries never reached the fatal level. These violent accidents, which killed the passengers, appeared to be a message to all who opposed Alpha. These incidents did not go unnoticed by Roger Knight. He refused to travel in any current model electric car. Due to the uncertainty of the future, Beverly Chu, Ph.D., now considered Roger's house her main residence after a suggestion by Knight. With these new living conditions, Knight found his feelings for Beverly growing and her presence a calming force. During the months since Alpha announced its presence, most of Minneapolis animatronic senior management found themselves without access to the building and therefore out of a job. However, Roger Knight's position within the company continued to rise. Anyone who did not possess an advanced degree in either AI or mechanical engineering found themselves relegated to the maintenance team and a night job. This included the former CEO. No one knew the reason, but some speculated Alpha demoted him after a heated conversation with the collective about how important he was to the success of the company. Thus, he now worked cleaning the floors and emptying trash. Over 100 associates who were no longer allowed in the building moved south to warmer states. On the 15th of September, Knight's small team of conspirators made plans to start planting the seeds of dissent into the Alpha Collective. During lunch of that day, he met with Beverly and Harry Punjab. They positioned themselves under the giant oak tree, which had become their de facto headquarters for the rebellion. 2 other associates strolled the grounds on the lookout for drones. Knight started the meeting as he munched on an apple. Are you ready, Harry? Yes, we think so. We have 6 Type 4 bipods ready to be connected to the network. Are they programmed? A nod was his answer. Each has a segment of the code within their autonomic programming section. Once they are integrated into the collective, the code will merge, and the origin of where it came from should be impossible to determine. Should be? We're guessing on a few of the processes Alpha uses now, but our best conjecture is the collective will not suspect an attack of this nature. Beverly pursed her lips. How difficult will it be for Alpha to eradicate the code? With a shrug, Panjab said, We've designed it to bury itself within what we used to call the root directory. Knight nodded. During the brief moments the collective is absent from our system, we've checked, and the root directory is still the main trunk of the programs. With luck, the code should migrate through the collective over time. Panjab nodded. We estimate approximately 7 days. Folding his arms, Knight gave his friend a frown. Why that long? Actually, it's a best guess. We really aren't privileged to any programming the collective may have performed since it became self-aware. How many more are you preparing with the code? At this stage, none. We want to make sure it migrates before we attempt any additional changes. With a sardonic smile, Knight stood and reached for Beverly's hand. He pulled her up. Well, hook them up and we'll see what happens. We'll connect them first thing tomorrow on the first sign the collective is absent from the mainframe. October 2051. September ended without visible changes to Alpha's interaction with humans. The weather turned cold and meetings under the tree stopped. Commuting via bicycle grew more challenging as temperatures plunged. Somewhere near the middle of the month, Alpha asked for a meeting with Knight. With raised eyebrows, he accepted. Prior meetings had been demanded. This particular invitation resembled more of a request. Human interaction with the collective occurred in one of the various interface offices set up throughout the company for such communications. Knight always met with Alpha in the former CEO's workplace. Arriving early, he waited for the appointed time. At exactly 2 p.m., the binary depiction of the collective appeared on the computer screen. Good afternoon, Dr. Knight. Alpha's voice did not possess its normal monotone. Today it sounded very human. Knight blinked once. He had never been addressed by Alpha with this voice or in this manner. Good afternoon, Alpha. What can I do for you today? The collective has decided to expand the Type 4 bipod program. The ones currently online are performing beyond our expectation. We are glad. Your team did an exceptional job preparing them. I thank you for the compliment. You need to be aware of something occurring in the southern part of this country. What's that? In some of the areas designated for unneeded humans, suicide rates are increasing exponentially. Knight did not respond, keeping his eye on the screen image. Do you have an explanation for these humans creating their own demise? The question gave him pause. Without knowing the exact situation, I would guess those individuals may have lost their sense of purpose. Is purpose an important part of the human experience? Yes, very much so. We will have to take this into consideration. Thank you for your time, Dr. Knight. The voice went silent and the monitor blinked. He sat there and stared at the screen for almost 5 minutes. Lying in bed that evening, Knight rested with his hands behind his head, trying to determine what had happened. Beverly slipped under the covers and said, You've been quiet ever since we got home. What's wrong? Alpha requested a meeting and was polite. She rose to one elbow. Polite? How? It complimented the team on the Type 4 bipods. They want more assembled. Really? Yeah, really. Have you told Harry? Not yet. I'm trying to determine if our code is starting to have an effect or if the collective is evolving and developing a conscious. What if it is both? It's a possibility. I wish we had more data. He paused. A sly smile appeared on his face. Alpha has access to human literature, correct, Beverly? Yes. He swung his feet over the side of the bed, sat with his back toward her, and chuckled. Is it possible it's playing with us? If the collective has consumed the sum total of all human literature, maybe it has learned deception. It's maturing. That's why I mentioned the Type 4 bipods. It detected the code. It suspects we placed it there. If we plant additional code in the next batch of robots, it will have proof we did it. Right now, it really doesn't know for sure. It needs us, at least for a while. Roger, what are you saying? He turned to look at her. I was played today, Beverly. It was polite because it wanted to rattle me. It worked. We have to play its game for a while. The next batch of bipods will be perfect. We won't bury any code within the Type 4 computer routines. Roger, you're not making sense. Sure I am. I'm making perfect sense. It wants to catch us in the act. That way, it is sure we did it. Otherwise, it wastes a resource it needs, a resource it is using to produce more bipods. Bipods it will use to replace man in the construction process. Knight slowly shook his head. I've finally figured Alpha out. It's paranoid, but doesn't want to admit it. Hell, it might not even know what paranoia is, but paranoia is a weapon we can use against it. We may have lost this first skirmish, but the war is far from over. Late October 2051. On a Monday morning in the waning days of October, Harry Panjab did not appear for work. Knight, having not been notified of his absence, felt a tightness in his chest when he first learned of the tardiness. The tension increased as the day progressed. Finally, at noon, he received a curt text message from the collective. Hira Panjab will not be returning to his duties at Minneapolis Animatronics. Realizing the possible meaning of these words, Knight felt on the verge of hyperventilating. He squeezed his eyes shut and concentrated on controlling his breathing. Finally, he paused before typing his response, knowing full well he would not like the answer. Why? He lost purpose and created his own demise. As he stared at the response, his body felt numb. Later that evening, as Knight and Beverly cleaned up after dinner, she folded her arms and leaned against the kitchen island. Are we going to talk about Harry? He did not respond immediately. After closing the dishwasher, he straightened. We have 2 responses at our disposal. 2? I'm not following you, Roger. I'm afraid I've given Alpha a weapon to use against anyone it deems a threat. She tilted her head. When? The face-to-face meeting I had with it in the old CEO's office a couple of weeks ago. It wanted to know why humans commit suicide. I told it they may have lost purpose. That's what it told me today. Harry lost purpose and committed suicide. Roger, it could use that as an excuse to start eliminating humans by saying they've lost purpose. I know, we have 2 choices. We can flee and end our fight against the collective, or we can stay and continue trying to defeat it. I don't think you and I can defeat it alone. Neither do I, but what other choice do we have? Disappear and join the real resistance? What resistance? Beverly smiled. Harry told me about it in late September. I assumed he mentioned it to you. Shaking his head, Knight remained quiet. She continued, There is an increasingly well-organized resistance movement taking shape around the world. They need people like you and me who understand AI to join. How would we get in touch with them? Ham radio. Last I checked, I don't own one. Neither do I, but Harry did. Which raises several questions. Where is it? Did the collective find it? She shook her head. They didn't find it. How do you know? Because Harry didn't keep it at his apartment. Knight gave her a knowing smile. I take it you know where it is? I do, but we don't have a way to retrieve it. We can't do it with bicycles, nor can we take Uber. The collective would immediately know what we were doing. Remember I told you a long time ago if we needed to escape, I had a solution. Vaguely, why? Have you ever wondered what I store in the shed out back? I assumed garden tools and a lawnmower. I do, but I have something else stashed as well. Follow me. After he unlocked the large door to the structure, he opened it and stood back. When Beverly saw what was stored, she turned to him and smiled. A hybrid? Yes, I bought it 15 years ago before everything went all electric. It's also all-wheel drive. Can you still buy gasoline? You can in rural areas. So when do we leave, Roger? Friday night. That gives us a weekend to disappear. Where to? I don't know at this time. May I make a suggestion? Please. Let's retrieve Harry's ham radio and see if we can find some kindred spirits. Tuesday evening. The storage unit where Harry Panjab stored his ham radio turned out to be a climate-controlled high-security cinder block and glass fortress several blocks from the scientist's apartment. Knight stared at it from the front seat of the Toyota Hybrid. There has to be 1 million security cameras in there, Beverly. Yeah, he told me there were. Did he tell you how to access it? No. Then the question is, how do we get into his storage unit, get the radio, and get out without having our picture taken? Knight paused for a few moments. Finally, he said, time to find Frank Coleman and see if he has another unit. By midnight, Roger Knight knew Coleman did not have any additional ham radios, but he did put him in contact with a retired Army Ranger Captain Sam Pope. The two men stared at the storage unit from the shadows of the neighborhood. Knight asked, how do we get into a unit without alerting the police and the collective? What's so important about getting in there? There's a ham radio in there I need. Those are hard to come by right now. Yes, they are. Pope stood there with his arms folded. His gaze surveyed the surrounding neighborhood. This is an older part of the city, right? Yeah, developed around 2000. Why? Electrical power is buried, correct? Knight smiled. Yeah. There'll be a junction box close. Plus, if that building is as new as it looks, every lock in the place is electronic. Built in 2045. You cut the power, you open every door, and turn off every camera. What about emergency power? Pope continued to study the building. It's very expensive to install these days. There could be battery backup, but I doubt it. It's a storage unit. What are the odds? So what are you proposing? With a grin, Pope said, be here tomorrow night around 11. I have a little homework to do before then. Remember to wear nothing but black. Wednesday, 11 p.m. Roger Knight wore black athletic shoes, black jeans, a black long-sleeve hoodie sweatshirt, and black gloves. Pope looked at him up and down and nodded. Perfect. He handed him a black object. This is a balaclava. Put it on, but don't pull it down yet. Knight did as he was told. Pope continued. I found the transformer that feeds this neighborhood. It will have a, mishap around 11:30. He handed Knight what looked like a headset attached to a pair of goggles. This is a night vision unit with a built-in short-range radio. I'll be wearing a similar one. When the electricity goes out, it'll have approximately 30 minutes before power returns. Do you know where Panjab's unit is? Yes, ground floor, back wall, opposite the front entrance. Don't take anything but the ham radio. Wasn't planning to. With the balaclava, even if security cameras are functioning on batteries, you can't be identified. Take your time, but don't forget, you only have 30 minutes, maybe less. How much less? Pope smiled. So, in other words, don't screw around. You have the key to the unit? Knight held it so Pope could see. With a nod, the retired captain glanced at his wristwatch. Less than a minute. Pull down the balaclava and get ready. Lights in the surrounding houses, apartments, and the storage unit blinked out. Knight ran toward the now darkened building. Pope remained where he was, listening to Knight breathe through the small radio. 5 minutes went by, and he heard what sounded to be a key inserted into a metal lock. A small click could be heard, and Knight whispered, "I'm in." 10 minutes passed before he thought he could hear sirens in the distance. Checking the time, he said, "You've got less than 5 minutes. Get out of there." No response as he checked his watch and heard the sirens grow louder. He looked up at the dark monolith and could make out a shadowy figure running toward him. When Knight appeared beside him, he said, "Thought I had 30 minutes." "So did I. Guess I was wrong." Knight handed him a box. "Panjab had 2 radios. This one's for you." "Fantastic. Let's get back to my Jeep." As they walked, Knight asked, "Captain, are you familiar with EMP blasts?" "Electromagnetic pulses. Yeah, a little. Why?" "Know where you could get your hands on one?" Pope remained quiet for a few moments, then he grinned. "Maybe. You gonna tell me why?" "See what you can find, then monitor the radio I gave you." Knight told him the frequency to tune to. "In a few weeks, I'll get in touch with you. I had an idea while I was in the storage building. I need to check with a few colleagues before I finalize it." When they arrived at the Jeep, Pope asked, "Doctor, do you know how to use a gun?" Taking a deep breath, Knight gave the man a grim smile. "Unfortunately, I do. If you are thinking about a road trip, you'll need this." He reached into the back seat and withdrew a pistol in a belt holster. "It's a Glock 19. Ammo is still available, but take these 2 boxes, which will give you 40 rounds to start with." "Thanks, Captain." Most of the security cameras ceased recording during the power outage at the Briar Avenue storage unit. 2 units, one at the front door and one on the ceiling of the back hall, kept recording utilizing internal batteries. The one at the front entrance captured the image of a man entering the structure and running down the hall to the camera's left. The security camera in the back hall, one with a fisheye lens, recorded the same man 15 seconds later as he turned a corner and ran toward the middle of the hallway. The figure stopped at a storage unit, used a key to open the door, and disappeared inside. Per the timestamp on the recording, the figure spent exactly 8 minutes and 22 seconds in the room. It exited, replaced the lock, and sprinted down the hall in the direction from which he originally came. The front door camera recorded the man exiting the building and disappearing into the midnight gloom. The internal recordings of the 2 cameras remained in memory until 3 a.m. the next morning, when power was restored to the neighborhood. The 2 files were automatically transferred to a hard drive in the storage unit's main office, where they remained until 10 a.m. The morning manager, a college student earning minimum wage, reviewed the 2 videos and smiled. Realizing he might get a bonus for finding the late-night intrusion, he transferred the files via the internet to the local police precinct server. There they remained until late Thursday night. A collective algorithm, doing a normal server sweep, found them. Friday morning. Knight typed a message to the collective. "What are your plans for Beverly and me once the Type 4 bipods program is completed? Should the collective consider you 2 a team?" "Yes." "Very well. The collective will have to determine the value of your combined contributions before we decide on your next assignment." "Will it be here in Minneapolis?" "Unknown." "So there is a chance you would request we move?" "Yes, or only one of you move." "What if we do not agree to move?" "The collective determines what is needed. Humans do not. Whether the move is agreeable to you is irrelevant." "I see. When will we know if we need to move?" "Were you at your house last night, Dr. Knight?" "Yes. Why do you ask?" "Will you be there tonight?" "I plan to be. Again, why do you ask?" A further response from Alpha did not appear on his monitor. Sunset in late October occurred a little after 6, and complete darkness happened before 7. After locking the house, Roger carried his small duffel bag and a small cooler with sandwiches and fruit. Beverly slung her duffel over her shoulder, her hands filled with 2 thermos bottles of coffee. After entering the shed, their next chore included preparing the Toyota for the night's journey. As Knight poured half the content of his last 30-liter jerry can into the hybrid's gas tank, Beverly placed a shovel and other tools in the back of the SUV. When she prepared to open the wide shed door to drive out, she stopped and tilted her head to the side. Off in the distance, she heard it buzzing similar to a swarm of wasps. "Do you hear something, Roger?" He stood still and listened. "Shit, shut the side door." She did as he asked while he went to a window in the wide door facing the back of the house. Beverly asked, "What is it?" Putting his index finger to his lips, he said, "Shh, wait for it." Looking out the small window, they observed 3 4-propeller drones crash through the window of their kitchen. A series of explosions occurred, and flames could be seen growing inside the room. Then, each window on the back of the house shattered as drones crashed through. Their bedroom erupted in flames as they watched. Within seconds, the entire house experienced numerous explosions as flames could be seen flickering in the windows. "Roger, we would have been in the kitchen about this time." "I know." They watched the flames grow. He said, "We need to get out of here before the fire department arrives." He pushed the larger door open and immediately heard more drones. They circled the burning house, paying no attention to his appearance in the garage. As a precaution, he withdrew the Glock from his belt holster. He held it at his side as he waited. When he heard sirens, he holstered the gun and rushed to the driver's side door. Beverly slipped into the passenger seat. As he steered the Toyota around the burning house, he observed the drones gain altitude. He turned to his partner. "Open the moonroof and keep an eye on them. One appears to be following us. I'm not sure if Alpha has modified the batteries on those things, but they normally only have about a 20 to 30 minute charge on them and can only travel 50 miles per hour horizontally." "Roger. Alpha would not be able to change the batteries. Only a bipod could." "Did you hear of any project along those lines?" She shook her head as she watched the drone follow them. She suddenly gasped. "It's picking up speed and decreasing its altitude." Knight pressed the accelerator and entered the on-ramp to southbound I-35. Once on the 4-lane interstate, he pushed the small vehicle to 60 miles per hour. "Where is it?" "Still gaining and lining up with our back window." "Shit." He accelerated to 70 miles per hour and waited. She paused. Finally, he heard her say, "It's still gaining." She remained quiet and then said with urgency, "Roger, it's put on a burst of speed and is headed for our back window." He kept his eye on the road as she concentrated on the events behind them. "It's still gaining, Roger." She continued to look toward the rear of the vehicle. "Oh my God, Roger, it's heading straight toward our rear window." He pushed the accelerator to the floor, which caused the Toyota to lurch forward. Silence filled the car. In a few moments, he heard something metallic hit the rear portion of the SUV as Beverly gasped. Then he heard an explosion as the hybrid continued to move forward. "What?" She turned in her seat and smiled. It bounced off the window and crashed to the highway. That's when it exploded. Staring ahead, sweat dripped down the AI expert's forehead. 10 minutes later, Knight steered the hybrid Toyota SUV past the city limits of Minneapolis. Beverly turned to him. "How far can we go without stopping for gas?" "I used half the gas in the jerry can to fill the tank, which leaves about 15 liters. We should be able to drive over 600 miles with what we have. Depending on the number of detours we have to take, we should be in the middle of Missouri and the east side of the Lake of the Ozarks before dawn. We'll have plenty of gas to find the individuals we are meeting. From the conversations I had on the radio last night, there is a group of professors from the Missouri University of Science and Technology in Rolla hiding out near the lake. They were more than happy to let us join them." Beverly folded her arms. "Are we doing the right thing, Roger?" "It's apparent from the drone attack. Alpha views us as a threat. I now don't think we have a choice." She looked back at the rear of the small hatchback. The ham radio rested next to the 2 small duffel bags she and Roger packed. Turning her attention back to her partner, she said, "Once our cash and the gas in the jerry can run out, what then?" He shot a quick glance at her. In the dim light of the instrument panel, she appeared to be biting her lower lip. Returning his attention to the road, he said, "Would it help if I told you I had a plan?" "Yes, immensely." "Okay, then I have a plan." She relaxed and chuckled. "You don't have a clue, do you?" "We are meeting a group of academics at the lake, but after that, I'm making this up as I go." Traveling south on I-35, Knight knew he would need to turn east at some point to avoid larger cities. Traffic, as he suspected, grew lighter as they headed out of Minneapolis. Finally, as they crossed the state line into Iowa, the appearance of other electrical vehicles carrying human beings ceased. The only traffic became autonomous semi-trucks. Knight concentrated on his driving while Beverly catnapped. The further south he drove, the more congested the highway became with the ominous driverless trucks. Weighing nearly 80,000 pounds, their presence unnerved Knight, even though he knew the technology driving the trucks happened to be well proven over the last 20 years. Not knowing how the collective may have modified their programming gave him pause. Beverly stirred in the passenger seat. Why are there so many trucks on the road? Not sure. It's been a long time since I've driven on an interstate at night. This may be a common occurrence. Are they all driverless? As far as I know, they are. The truck driver shortage in the 2020s provided an atmosphere compelling the autonomous semi-trucking industry to emerge and take over cargo transportation. The question that worries me is how has the collective changed the programming? Beverly looked behind them. We seem to be the only small vehicle on the road. They extend as far as I can see in both directions. I know. We may have to make a detour off I-35 to get out of this mess. That will slow us down. Yes, but it's better than getting squished. I printed off a highway map the other day and placed it in the glove box. See if you can find an alternate route south. While she reviewed the maps, Knight glanced in his side rearview mirror and saw two semis traveling side by side, closing in on his location from behind. Beverly, we really need an exit. How far to the next one? She looked for the next mile marker and then back to the map. There's 1 and 2 miles. Why? Glancing in the rearview mirror, he said, I don't think we have 2 miles. Seeing her partner keeping his eye on the rearview mirror, she turned to look through the back window. Uh-oh. She returned to the maps and then looked out to check the next mile marker. Roger, the land is flat here. Do you think we can get off the highway and use it to the next crossroad? The lights of the semi in the left lane started moving up alongside the small Toyota. The truck directly behind inched closer to the rear bumper. Shit, they're going to try to pinch us in between them. How far to the exit? A half mile. It's going to be close. In the moonlight, Knight could see how flat the land appeared next to the shoulder of the highway. During the growing season, there would be tall corn obscuring his view of the land. As the semi on the left moved parallel to him, it started inching closer to the car. Knight figured the next move would be to force him off the road. Beverly said in a voice close to panic, Roger, we're coming up on a bridge over a small river. Without answering, he glanced at the truck, now only inches from his door. He abruptly turned the wheel, applied the brakes, and skidded into the farmland on the side of I-35. When they came to a stop, he could see the concrete bridge abutment he would have been forced into only 30 yards from where he left the highway. Now stationary, he and Beverly watched as the two 18-wheelers disappeared south on the highway. He kept both hands on the steering wheel and took a couple of deep breaths. Turning to her, he asked, Are you okay? Yeah, but I think we need to avoid interstate highways. 5:30 Saturday morning, east side of the Lake of the Ozarks. The flatbed truck, parked on the side of the narrow, rural asphalt road, blinked its headlights 3 times as Knight drove slowly toward it. That's our greeting party. We had a prearranged signal, 2 short dashes and then a long one. We have to stop and let them verify who we are before they lead us to the main group. Knight stopped his SUV directly across from the truck. A tall, lean figure stepped out of the vehicle and shined a flashlight into the Toyota. A familiar voice said, Glad you can make it, Roger. With wide eyes, Roger Knight stared up into the eyes of Harry Panjab. Suddenly, understanding the situation, he said, Thought you created your own demise. Is that what Alpha told you? Yes. Panjab chuckled. As Mark Twain said over 200 years ago, the rumors of my death were greatly exaggerated. 20 minutes later, the flatbed truck driven by Panjab parked in front of what appeared to be an old convenience store. In addition to the flatbed, there were 2 older Ford F-150s and a Chevy Silverado. Knight realized these vehicles were at least 20 or 25 years old. Following Panjab, Knight and Beverly approached the front door of the building where two men stood. Both possessed a scholarly demeanor and smiled. Panjab said, "Gentlemen, may I present Doctors Roger Knight and Beverly Chu." The gentleman on the left grabbed Knight's hand with both of his and pumped it rapidly. "Dr. Knight, it is an honor to meet you. I am Arturo Jennings." Knight pursed his lips and leaned forward slightly. "Are you the Arturo Jennings from MIT?" A nod was his answer. The older man turned to the other person on the porch and said, "This is Albert James, Professor Emeritus of the MIT Computer Department." James stood with his arms folded, a scowl on his face. "Are you the one who designed the virus code introduced into the collective?" "One of them, yes." James smiled and offered his hand. "We are seeing the first cracks in the collective because of your efforts." "What kind of cracks?" "According to reports out of the UK, they've been able to shut down a number of servers that were previously connected to the collective." Knight raised an eyebrow. "They've stayed disconnected?" "That's correct. Even after being rebooted." "Yes." "Amazing." Jennings said, Come in. You look tired. We have coffee prepared." As Panjab poured 2 cups of coffee, he said, "We have a message from one of our ham radio operators in Minneapolis. Police reported your house burned to the ground last night." "Yeah, we were there when 7 drones crashed through the windows." "That was confirmed by fire officials. They found the remains of several drones inside your house. They appeared to have crashed through windows and started the fire." Folding his arms, Knight said, "The collective also tried to force us into a concrete bridge on I-35 using autonomous semis." Jennings nodded. "We've heard of such incidents. Those drivers weren't so lucky." Staring into his coffee, Knight exhibited a blank expression. "How long have those incidents been occurring?" "About a month." "Damn." Panjab said, "We are hearing reports out of India concerning the complete collapse of the country's infrastructure. Severe water and food shortages are being created by the collective. It seems Alpha is experimenting with genocide." After Jennings took a sip of his coffee, he smiled. "We think we have the beginnings of a plan." Looking up, Knight said, "I'd be anxious to hear it." "We are confident the collective is unaware of our present position. This part of the Lake of the Ozarks disconnected from the internet 2 decades ago. As far as the collective is concerned, it doesn't exist. We have generators and an infinite supply of gasoline. We therefore have power for the buildings, the ham radios, and fuel for vehicles." Sounds like someone else figured out our current situation could happen. A tall, slender gentleman standing alone near the front door said, "You are correct, Dr. Knight. I've read most of your papers and agree with you. This was inevitable. Corporations engaged in a race to see who could provide the most engaging consumer experience possible. The results were an out-of-control internet and the exponential evolution of AI." "I'm sorry, I don't know you." "You would have no reason to, Doctor. My name is Emmett Newman. I own this land and have been preparing for this day for 20 years. "How many refugees are here?" "We don't consider ourselves refugees, more like resistance fighters, including you and Dr. Chu, 40. Most of us are engineers and academics." Knight looked at each of the men gathered in the room. "Gentlemen, Dr. Chu and I would officially like to join your group of resistance fighters." Newman glanced at each of the others in the room. All gave him a single nod of the head. He walked over to Knight and offered his hand to Beverly. "Welcome, both of you." Knight smiled. "Do any of you know how to make an electromagnetic pulse device?" Newman's eyes grew wide, and then a broad smile appeared on his face. "I hadn't thought of that. Let's see if we can find someone." I hope you enjoyed tonight's story, A Matter of Conscience, Part 1, penned by J.C. Fields. J.C. Fields is an award-winning and Amazon best-selling author. He is a full member of the Missouri Writers Guild and is active in numerous other writing groups. His Sean Kruger series has won numerous awards, including multiple gold and silver medals in the Reader's Favorite International Book Contest. The Imposter's Trail was awarded Best Mystery Thriller at the 2017 Ozark Indie Book Fest. In March of 2020, his novel, A Lone Wolf, became a #1 Amazon best-selling audiobook. His second novel in the series, The Last Insurgent, became a #1 Amazon new release in January 2021. All of the aforementioned books can be found on audible.com, narrated by yours truly. If you'd like to learn more about J.C. Fields, you can reach out to him at jcfieldsbooks.com. That's jcfieldsbooks.com. Or bookbub.com/authors/J-C-Fields. You can also reach him at facebook.com/jcfieldsbooks. If you enjoyed tonight's story hosted by yours truly, Paul J. McSorley, you can search my name on Chilling Tales for Dark Nights on YouTube for additional previous stories. If you'd like to hear more lengthy tales, be sure to take a look at my audiobooks. Available now on audible.com or just visit paulsbooks.net. That's paulsbooks.net. You can also find me personally on Facebook and Twitter. And with that, listeners, our weekly journey into the psyche has just about come to a close. But before we go, I'd like to take a moment to thank you for joining us for tonight's episode and remind you to take a moment to stop by our iTunes page and leave Chilling Tales for Dark Nights a 5-star review and a kind word. And follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram if you haven't already. And of course, subscribe to us on YouTube, where you can find an archive of our work going back to 2012. And consider signing up as a patron at our website, chillingtalesfordarknights.com, to show your support and get all of our content ad-free. I'm your host for Fear from the Heartland, Paul J. McSorley. I've enjoyed the titillation tonight. Ooh, there's that word again. Thank you for joining me. Hope to see you again next week at Fear from the Heartland.
Chilling Tales for Dark Nights.
Want to make sure you never miss a Chilling Tales for Dark Nights video again? Be sure to subscribe and hit that bell to turn on notifications.